Part 2, Overcoming, Chapter 8, Prepare to Stand Alone. My high school pro-life club met Wednesday nights. On one particular Wednesday morning, I called or texted all the club members to remind them about our meeting as I always did. Hey, just calling to remind you about tonight. We're going to be running through a presentation for our event in 3 weeks. This time, everyone had an excuse. Oh, I'm sorry, Lee. I'm behind on homework and can't make it. I have other plans. My mom wants to do a family movie night. I just can't make it. No one was coming. Frustrated and disappointed, I couldn't understand why my friends didn't prioritize our pro-life work. Couldn't they see that lives were on the line? The meeting tonight is canceled, I told my mom. Oh no, what happened? Everyone is too busy to come, I said. She could see the disappointment on my face. I'm sorry to hear that. It's just frustrating when no one else seems to take this very seriously, I sighed. What am I doing wrong? My mom looked at me sympathetically and said, Leadership is lonely, Lila. Sometimes we have to go it alone. But if we keep going and never give up, eventually, people will follow. 10 years later, millions would be following Live Action, the pro-life educational nonprofit I would go on to build. They followed because they, too, believed in the cause to protect innocent human life. But that following didn't happen overnight, or in a month, or even in a year. And I had to start even when I didn't know what I was doing, and even when I was alone. Sometimes the toughest battles are the ones nobody else sees, the ones in our minds. When beginning our mission, the first obstacles we may face are our own fears and doubts. If our minds are sabotaging our efforts, we will always struggle to make progress. What are our fears? We may worry about what other people think of us. We may wonder, will people disapprove of me? Will they think my cause is wrong? Will they reject me? What are the doubts? We may wonder whether we have what it takes to actually make a difference. We may ask ourselves, what difference can I possibly make? I don't know what to do. I'm not sure what to say. Working for any cause is challenging, but there is a unique challenge when taking up a cause perceived as countercultural or controversial. Safe causes can be easier. No one discouraged my high school best friend and me from raising money for famine victims in Niger. No one was offended when, as a 15-year-old, I went to Tijuana, Mexico with our church group to help build houses for the poor. No one objected when I went to Morocco at 18 to help earthquake victims. And the Sunday school teachers at my parents' church praised me when I volunteered to care for a child with disabilities during the services. These were all worthy causes. Helping people in need is always important. These efforts require determination, grit, and creativity. A new test for all of us, however, may come when we take on a cause not everyone agrees with. These are the unsafe causes. The causes that can be derailed by self-consciousness and questions about what people might think of us. Media can have a significant influence over what is considered safe or unsafe in a cause. For example, when I was a high school student, a local San Jose newspaper did a feature story celebrating our fundraising campaign for famine victims in Niger. The reporter met my friend and I at a local bagel shop and congratulated us on our humanitarian efforts. Famine relief is a safe cause. Years later, the San Jose media also took notice of my pro-life work, but the feature piece they wrote about Live Action was critical and condescending. Abortion is not a safe cause. In the media's eyes, Live Action was controversial, and not in a good way. This is not to suggest that a controversial cause is more important than an uncontroversial cause, but it is to say we should not shy away from causes simply because they may be controversial. In the 19th century, for instance, to stand against slavery was highly controversial. It often meant standing alone. Abolitionists risked public scorn, the loss of their livelihoods, and violence. But had the controversy discouraged them from standing up for justice, the evil of slavery would have gone unchallenged. Even into the 20th century, it took great courage for women to stand up for the right to vote. The women who went public with their protest endured ridicule, from both men and women. But those abolitionists and suffragists were not primarily concerned with what others thought of them. They were confident in their causes. I think that is key for us. If we are confident in our causes, if we understand the why behind what we are fighting for, we will be less concerned with the opinions of others. We will not worry so much about being understood or being accepted, and our confidence will win others over. What about the fear that we may not be qualified to fight for our cause? Over the years, there have been many times when my own self-doubts have bred in me a complex called the imposter syndrome. While imposter syndrome is not an official diagnosis, many psychologists acknowledge that high achievers are often plagued with chronic self-doubt. Imposter syndrome sufferers often feel they have no right to be doing the work they are doing. They think they lack the credentials or the talent or the character and often feel afraid someone will figure it out. I've experienced bouts of imposter syndrome over the years. The reality is, I was in over my head from the beginning. As I've shared, I started live action when I was 15. I started doing investigative reporting as an 18-year-old freshman at UCLA, the biggest university in California, and in many ways, one hostile to my cause. I had little formal training in journalism. My school didn't even offer a journalism major, but I saw a tremendous need, and I felt strongly that I had to fill it. My first undercover investigation of Los Angeles abortion facilities exposed their willingness to cover up child sexual abuse. As a result of that investigation, I did my first television interview while still a freshman, not on a local show with a limited audience, but on a #1 rated national cable news show. There wasn't much time for practice. I was thrown into the deep end of the pool from the beginning. Certain friends fell out of my life, and acquaintances railed against me on social media. It hurt, but what would have hurt more was inaction, because lives were on the line. That's when I realized that I could choose some of my hurts, just as I could choose to push through my doubts. And there were many opportunities for doubt. I was just 19 when live action earned non-profit status. I gave my first briefing to members of Congress at 21 while I was still in college. I raised my first $1 million at 22. I hosted my first congressional press conference with dozens of congresspeople and media groups at 23. And I made a very embarrassing mistake. More about that in another chapter. I say this not to brag, but to confess. I was learning every uncertain step of the way. While I had personal heroes and mentors, no one had gone before me and charted a similar route and then told me exactly how to follow. There was no detailed instruction manual, and although I had help, generous and wise souls who accompanied me at various moments in the journey, I had no co-founder. The path wasn't marked out for me, and it still isn't, and it's unlikely to be for you or for any of us trying to forge a new path of change. You may feel like an imposter when you begin your mission, but you aren't. You're a brave soul who is willing to stand up, even when others won't, and give the best of what you have. Don't buy into the creeping doubts telling you that you can't stand up, that you shouldn't speak, that you won't make a difference. Your cause is waiting. You can do this. My best advice for you as you begin your fight, even in the midst of doubt, is this. Lean in to your conviction. Let your passion drive you. For me, knowing I was fighting to help save the life of even one child eroded my own feelings of inadequacy and insecurity. If we are focused enough on what and for whom we are fighting, our desire to make a difference will overcome our fear of failure. We discover true courage when we feel our fears and admit our doubts, and then try anyway. The reality is, we are all imposters when we first begin. Qualification comes with practice. And there is no more effective practice than on-the-job experience. Practice isn't faking it, it's learning. To learn, we have to be ready to make mistakes. And we have to be willing to get back up even after an embarrassing fall. If we constantly give in to self-doubt or worry that what the world will think less of us, we can talk ourselves out of fighting for the best of causes before we've even begun. We cannot afford to leave the great work of our world's most pressing causes to others, because we imagine they are somehow more prepared, better qualified, or simply braver. Instead, we can look to those who have gone before us, learn what we can, and courageously get to work. We need to cultivate that little fire in our souls, that desire to stand up and fight for what is right, and do so carefully. Self-doubt is a swift extinguisher, so ignore it. We can develop our abilities through our experiences and through formal study under able teachers. To nurture those abilities, we have to seek out the heroes, mentors, and coaches who can teach us and help us. More on mentors and coaches in chapters 14 and 15. St. Joan of Arc, one of my heroes and my confirmation saint, famously said, "Act, and God will act." Confident in her calling, this teenage French girl set out alone to do the unthinkable and seemingly impossible, leading thousands of soldiers to historic victories against English occupation. Ultimately, it was her faith in God that gave her the courage. Later, even in the face of rejection, betrayal, and execution, she chose to trust. It was God, not the world, who had both called and qualified her. Her dogged faith in an all-powerful, all-loving God empowered her to fight for what is right, no matter the cost. When beginning any endeavor, I have found it rare that everyone in my life supported or understood what I was trying to do, and rarer still that I felt fully confident I would succeed. During my years of activism, I lost friends because they disapproved of what I was doing. However, I also discovered over time that there were many others out there who believed as I did, but either were too nervous to take a stand or did not know where to start. I believe the same will be true for you. Your willingness to stand alone will set an example for those around you. Your courage will inspire others.